Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when and where you're watching this Facebook Live. This is the voice and the face of Dr. Tolu Olabinton, CEO and co-founder of Living Spring Family Medical Center in the awesome city of Mansfield, Texas, where we believe in helping our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. I am very excited today, actually, to bring on again our guest. We've had her on before, sometime last year. And today we'll be talking about the topic, Doc, how can I tell whether the foods I buy are as good as they claim? I have the one and the only Dr. Michele Johnson. Doc, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. Now, if you don't mind me asking, I'm going to ask for the sake of our viewers, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Michele Johnson. I'm a medical physician. I am board certified in physical medicine rehabilitation, interventional spine, obesity medicine, and then also lifestyle medicine. And I'm also the founder of More Food Less Medicine, where we strive to help people reverse and improve chronic diseases like diabetes type 2, high cholesterol, and obesity with simple foods.
I love what you do. And one of the things that I wanted to mention about Dr. Johnson as well, she's also board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation, management, obesity medicine, and lifestyle medicine. Because you try to downplay all your board certifications, so she's multiple board certified, and she believes in a comprehensive approach to patient care and health. Like she said, she's the founder, and I love the name of your organization. More food, less medicine. And she hosts a subscription podcast that strives to help people with prediabetes and diabetes type 2 reverse and improve their health using God's word. So I wanted to highlight that because that's a big deal. It's a big deal to have you on. So thank you so much for coming again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, quick question though, why do you do what you do? What got you in this?
Also, a few years ago, my mom was diagnosed with diabetes type 2, and she
Okay.
was on two medications. And the physician that she was seeing said she had to go on a third medication. And my mom walks probably like 3 to 4 miles every day. She
Mm.
looks at labels, she picks food, and we decided that we were going to lean in and look at how we can use nutrition to help improve her health. And we started looking at labels, we started removing a lot of packaged food, artificial sweeteners, and she was able to get off all of her medication. And actually, a few weeks ago, she had her blood work done, and her labs were better off medication than on those two medications. So it's really important. Yes, I think it's really important. So there's also a study of in June, July of 2022, and it actually looked at about 9,700 people, about 10,000 people, and it asked them to rate their diet. And they looked at the range of excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. And about 89% of people rated their diet very good. All of the participants, their diet was rated poor. And it just highlights the fact that we think that we're eating well
Mm.
and we are doing all the things we think are right, but nutrition is very difficult and we have to really understand that a lot of it's marketing.
I agree. And I love, and of course, we do recommend having a discussion with your doctors, come up with an individualized plan for you. But it is possible to use food as medicine, use food to heal, use food to reverse chronic conditions. It is very possible. We're seeing it over and over again. And you're right. The food engineering department or like committee, whoever their bodies are or the governing board bodies are, they're very good at what they do. And so it's very important when we're making these decisions that we know exactly what we're deciding to eat good or not eat so good. All right. So really, really important. So this is good. Thank you for sharing that story. Um, so my first question to you is this, and for those of you who are watching live, hashtag live, or for those of you watching replay, hashtag replay. But my question is this: nutrition labels. Um, it's now become a standard. Can you explain what it is and why it is?
Oh, sure. And I don't know if we have a screenshot. If we don't, we can just talk about it. So in about 1990, about 30 years ago, um, we started putting labels on food. I feel super old that 1990 is 30 years ago, but it got updated in 2020 and official in 2021. And so what we see now, if you look at the nutrition facts, we now see a serving size for the entire container. In addition, we drop down and you'll see a serving size, and it gives you the nutrients for one single serving. And what you're going to find is calories and then the macronutrients at the top. And it's going to have your fat, protein, carbohydrates. You're also going to see sodium and cholesterol. And then at the second section, you're going to see micronutrients. So your vitamins and your minerals. And so what's new in the new label? The new label, what we find is, again, the entire serving size for the package in case we accidentally eat the whole package of food. The next thing is they remove calories from fat. The thought is that it's not so important that we worry about fat, but where's your fat coming from? And so you see saturated fat, trans fat. Those are the fats that really aren't as, they're more disease promoting fats. And you want to limit them. So typically what the American Health Association recommends is keeping your saturated fat to about 5 to 6% of your total daily value. And then trans fat, they are extremely dangerous for you. And so what I would say, and what happened is actually they're banned. Trans fats are banned in packaged food in the United States. There is a loophole. If you are below 0.5 grams per serving, you can round down to 0. And so you may see that a label has 0 trans fats, but on the ingredients label, you really want to look for partially hydrogenated. And if you see that it has trans fats, put it back. And so with trans fats, why are they so bad? They increase your risk for heart disease, they decrease your good cholesterol, and they increase your bad cholesterol. So just stay away from that completely. The next section that we see is carbohydrates. They switched and they added sugar. So before we could only see total sugar, and a product could have natural sugar, like let's say applesauce, and it could have added sugar, so someone could sweeten the applesauce. So how much of those sugars are added and how much of those sugars are natural, now we can tell in added sugars. And then the last change that we kind of will focus on is your micronutrients. They took away vitamin A, vitamin C. It's very rare you're going to see deficiencies in vitamin A and vitamin C, but now they replaced it with vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium, so that way we can know what's in our food.
Awesome. You dropped a lot of gems, and I'm glad, and thank you all for watching live. I'll say this: I'm hoping people can go replay and then re-listen. By law now, the nutrition facts were put in place, well, I mean years ago, to expose us to what we're eating. So that way, it's like, well, at least I told them. At least I told them that they're eating some things that are not so good for them, some things that can increase heart disease. So they made a decision. They saw the label. We're clear. All right. So my next question is this, and we're still looking at the label. It's, what is a serving? Can you explain that? So looking at this one, let's say it's, I don't know what food we want to use, but some packaged food, and they're saying it has 8 servings. What does that mean in terms of these numbers that you see here, Doc?
So the serving size is determined by the FDA. And so what happens is they will give a recommendation of what the serving size should be based on what we typically eat. Not how much you should eat, but how much a typical person will eat. So if we look at something like a can of soda, 12 ounces, the serving size used to be 8 ounces, but very few people are leaving 4 ounces of soda in the can. And so the serving size has now changed to 12 ounces. And so when we look at serving size, it's not a recommendation of what you should eat. It's a typical amount of what we're eating as the nutrition label. But then when we look at serving size in terms of our own life, you have different guidelines. So when we look at, let's say, things like protein, you want to look at the size of your fist is a serving size of protein, or a deck of cards. If you want to look at things like nuts, even though nuts are a healthy fat. We want to limit them to about a fourth of a cup, and that's about a golf ball size. We look at carbs, about an ounce of bread or a half a cup of your whole grains. And then with your healthy fats, you're looking at about the size of the tip of your thumb is a good serving size. Fruits, they recommend a medium-sized fruit. I say find the biggest fruit you can find. And then smaller things like mandarins and peaches, and even like plums, you may get 2 of those. And then vegetables, half a cup, like a computer mouse is a good serving size. And then leafy green vegetables, about a cup, about a baseball size. Again, I say with leafy green vegetables, always talk to your doctor. You don't want to suddenly increase your leafy green vegetables if you have something like Coumadin or warfarin, or if you have kidney issues, or you're not used to eating a lot of fiber. But if your doctor says, go ahead, the way that I say, you know, you're in a good range is people will say 9 words to you. Are you going to eat all of that yourself? That's how you know you're in a good range for your leafy green vegetables. Okay.
I like that. I like that. So let's talk. So let's looking at this diagram or this picture here. So and correct me if I'm wrong. So this has 8 servings. So let's say this is a bag of chips. So in each serving, there's 230 calories, right? So it means that if this was a whole bag of chips and there are 8 servings, it means that if I eat the whole bag of chips, I've eaten 8 times 230 calories. Is
Yes,
that correct?
that's correct. So everything on that below calories gets multiplied by 8. So what
Because
I'm
sometimes this serving size looks small and the calories look big. So you're like, oh, if I eat this, I'm just eating 230 calories. I still have room to eat.
Yeah, so what you want to always do is the new labels have the entire package serving size. And so you can multiply that number by the number of calories below it, and that will give you the entire amount of calories and nutrients if you eat the entire package. So there's a little bit of math involved, but understand that if the serving size the serving size per container does not say 1, that means that you have to do some multiplication.
And we got calculators for that. But if I were to calculate this one, 230 times 8,042, that's 1,840 calories. If whoever eats this is, yeah. So it's a good size. And I think this is important to emphasize because sometimes we go about a day approximating and not realizing that we're eating more than we think we are, or we're eating healthier than we are. My next question to you is this, Doc. So, what are 3 things you mentioned it before, but I wanted us to reemphasize it, that I should avoid or limit when I'm looking at the nutrition fact? I get a bag of something, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, and I have to choose between bag 1 or box 1 and box 2. What 3 things would you say I should look at quickly? Because sometimes, when you look at the numbers, people feel like, oh my God, I feel so overwhelmed. It looks like too much to calculate, so I'm not going to look at it. But what are 3 quick things you say, okay, stay away from, avoid, or limit?
So the first thing I would say is when you look at the label, you want to look at your total fats. Um, Again, it's broken down into the fats that are kind of disease promoting, are going to be your saturated and your trans fat. And the FDA has a 520 rule. So if a food has a nutrients that is 5% or less, so let's say that the total fat is 5% or less, then that means it's low in that nutrient. And if it's 20% or more, that means it's high in that nutrient. So it's a very quick and dirty way to look at a percentage without using a calculator. So if your total fat is under 5%, that means it's a low fat food per the FDA, and you can use that rule. And then if it's over 20%, that means it's high in that food. It's a high fat food. So you want to limit your negative fats. And your negative fats are going to come from your trans fats and your saturated fats. Saturated fats are fats that are going to be solid at room temperature, and then when you heat them up, they melt. So think about your butters, your animal fats. And then trans fats are man-made fats. They take vegetable oils and then they add a hydrogen to them to make them more shelf stable. So those are things that you definitely want to avoid. Keep that under 5%. The American Heart Association recommends for saturated fat, 5 to 6% of your calories should come from saturated fat. The next thing you want to look at is your sodium. So sodium, the recommendation is under about 2,300 milligrams, and that comes from a chronic disease risk reduction index. And so that says that if we keep our sodium under 2,300, then we decrease our risk for heart disease and high blood pressure. And so 2,300 is kind of hard to calculate that number. So if you look at this label, there are 230 calories. And then you want to go down to your sodium, and you want to make sure that it's 1-to-1 or less. So if you keep your 2,000 calories and you have a 1-to-1 ratio of calories to sodium, then that is a good range for keeping your number under 223 milligrams of sodium. And so when your doctor tells you to decrease your sodium, a lot of times what we do is we'll go home and we'll get still seasonings that don't have salt in them, or we will stop using salt at the dinner table. But we only put 5% of our daily intake of sodium. It comes from us cooking. 6% comes from the dinner table. 77% of the sodium we take in comes from packaged or pre-prepared foods. So when you're looking at foods that have sodium, I would just recommend packaged foods. Go for unsalted or no salt added, and then you add your own salt at the dinner table or when you're cooking. And then the very last thing I would recommend is looking at your sugars. Added sugars, I would recommend keeping it under in your single digits, so 9 or less.
Awesome. This is very, very good. I wanted to highlight a few things, Doc. Sometimes the sat fat, the trans fat, people think, okay, what's the big deal? It's not, it tastes good. And but what those things do is it causes blood vessels. So think of your heart as a water reservoir, right? It's pumping water to different houses. The houses represent the different organs. So those pipes that send water from the reservoir to the houses can get clogged. The fats, the sat fats, the trans fats, they start the clogging process and actually accelerate it. And so when it gets significantly closed off, that's when people have heart attacks, have strokes, and other organ damage. So really, really important. So Doc, let's calculate this one for the salt. So if someone ate all of this, they would eat 160 times 8 amount of salt. Yeah, so 160 times 8084 is 1,280 milligrams already of salt if they ate the whole thing. So really, the math is very, 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 very important. Now for someone who's watching, who's saying, it sounds like a lot of work. I have to be reading what I'm eating. I mean, it doesn't make eating exciting. Are there a few mindset tips that maybe you want to share before we wrap up? Like, why do I need to do all of this? And it can be a little daunting and like, oh my gosh, like over the top. What would you say, Doc?
So the first thing I would say is try to avoid foods in packages. If we are getting, 80-90% of our calories from whole foods, then we don't have to worry too much about this. It's when we're getting a significant amount of calories from prepared or processed foods, then we have to get really nitty gritty about the different nutrients. But if you're eating foods without labels, fresh fruits and vegetables, you're not too worried about those. So if you make those kind of the foundation of your nutrition, then you're not too worried about this. The other thing I would say is that food is our first line of defense against disease. And so what we're doing every single day makes a difference. One of the things is sometimes we can get lost in the amount of food that we're taking in. I really talk about sugar. We take in about 18 teaspoons of sugar every single day. The American Heart Association recommends 9 teaspoons for men, 6 teaspoons for women. And our children are taking in about 65 pounds of sugar every single day. And when we think about this in terms of our body as a whole, the difference between someone who has diabetes and someone who has a normal blood sugar is so small. Our body is able to clear out those 18 teaspoons day after day after day until it's not. And a normal blood sugar, you have a little bit less than a teaspoon of sugar in your blood. And a person with diabetes has a teaspoon and a quarter. So it's about a half a teaspoon difference, makes a difference between whether you have a higher risk for kidney disease, dialysis, strokes, high blood pressure, hypertension. Those are things that we want to make sure we avoid. And if we can avoid those by making little changes every single day, you you can live long and live well.
And that's why we're having this conversation. It's not to put pressure on you. It's to say, I'm now I know I can make an educated or an informed decision when I'm choosing what I'm going to eat. All right. This is not to make you feel bad or make you feel scared. It's to empower you and say, oh my goodness, I'm not going to let them trick me. I know what I'm putting in my body, my temple. And I want to live to my 70th, 80th, 90th birthday and look back and reflect on all God has done for me in good health. All right. So I hope you're encouraged. Those of you who are watching, Dr. Johnson, you're amazing. I'm so happy to have had you on. And I have people who are watching who are like, man, I like this doctor. I want to sign up for whatever she has going on. I want to connect with her, maybe to come speak on my platform. Doc, where can people find you?
So you can visit my website. It's www.drmichelle, Michelle.com. And we're currently doing a podcast. We're really just focused on Christian health, biblical principles. And it's really simple. It's like 5 minutes, and you can pop in and listen to it. If you want more information, just visit our website.
Awesome, awesome. And what I'm going to do, or what we're going to do, is make sure that those links are posted in the chat so people can connect with you after this. Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle with 1L, for coming on. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And you're doing amazing work, and thank you for doing this every single week. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for watching. Again, I can't tell who's watching, but I celebrate you and I appreciate you for joining. And if you or anyone you know is looking for a thorough, a passionate, and a physician who have conversations and empower you to choose better eating habits, I am she. Have a good one, everyone. Don't go, doctors.